Welcome back to IOTV on the Hour. I'm Alec Pollard, coming to you live from Israel with the biggest stories from across the region. U.S. President Donald Trump is again signaling that military action against Iran is on the table as the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, has entered the Mediterranean with its strike group moving east towards Iran. U.S. Air Force strategic airlifters have also been deployed to Europe. Let's listen to Trump.
Do you have any message to the Iranian people?
The Iranian people in Iran or people here?
People in Iran.
They better negotiate a fair deal. You know, the people of Iran are a lot different than the leaders of Iran. And it's very sad situation.
Options reportedly include targeting Iranian military leaders, striking nuclear and security facilities, and even contingency plans that could aim at regime change, though officials stress no final decision has been made. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister says a written counter-proposal could be ready within days and falsely insists the U.S. has not demanded zero uranium enrichment. Tehran says it is prepared for confidence-building measures to prove its program is peaceful. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says President Donald Trump is curious as to why Iran has not yielded under mounting U.S. pressure as nuclear talks between the sides remain stalled on core issues. Listen here.
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do, and yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Now inside Iran, anti-regime demonstrations erupted across universities in the country as the new semester began, chanting anti-government slogans such as death to Khamenei and calls for regime change. The rallies coincided with mourning ceremonies held 40 days after the deadly nationwide crackdown in which thousands of innocent protesters were brutally gunned down by the regime. At Amir Kabir University of Technology, video shows demonstrators chanting "Long live the King," a reference to Reza Pahlavi, son of Iran's ousted monarch. The student union says security forces later blocked exits and detained participants. Now, Hezbollah says 8 of its operatives were killed in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley, including a figure identified as a commander, Hussein Mohammad Yagi. The IDF targeted 3 Hezbollah missile command centers, killing a large number of operatives. Lebanese media report that at least 10 people were killed and more than 50 wounded. President Joseph Aoun condemned the recent Israeli airstrikes in the Sidon and Bekaa Valley regions, saying the attacks frustrate efforts to stabilize the country. Aoun called the strikes a hostile act that undermines diplomatic initiatives led by Lebanon and its partners, including the United States. Meanwhile, a Saudi report claims Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, is now effectively running Hezbollah, preparing the Lebanese terror group for a possible war with Israel and the United States. The same report says the IRGC officers recently arrived in Lebanon and are rebuilding Hezbollah's military capabilities, including its missile arsenal, even briefing fighters in the Bekaa Valley, where Israeli airstrikes hit overnight. Now, to discuss all these developments, we have with us Dr. Eric Mandel, founder and director at MEPIN, and Reserve Major General Alexander Greenberg, an expert on Iran from the JISS. Thank you, the both of you, for coming on the show. Eric, we'll start with you. Trump slowly coming to the realization that Iran can't be negotiated with?
We're trying to read the tea leaves here of where the president is going to go. Is he going to do like he did in June and not wait for the end of his self-imposed deadline and attack? Or is he looking for other things? So let's take a step back and read the tea leaves a little bit here. And by the way, one of the reasons I say we read the tea leaves more than we have in the past is that this Trump administration, the second compared to the first, is a very tight circle and leaks don't come out. Witkoff said he wants Iran to formally state that it will not have nuclear weapons. Now, that scares me a little bit, that these wonderful transactional real estate lawyers of New York are realizing they're dealing with Shiite jihadists who practice tadiyah, religiously approved lying. I'll just tell you a quote, because Laranjani, this is from Mohammed Javed Laranjani, who's one of Khamenei's leading advisors, and actually was just elevated in position in case the supreme leader is assassinated. This is his quote: "It's Persian wisdom. We don't have to be ideal people. Everybody lies. Let's be good liars." So I think, when I hear Wickoff make statements like that, we want to hear the Iranians say something that we want to hear. I think that is not a good place to be. Reading the tea leaves a little further, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is part of the Republican Party that has been very strong on that Israel is an indispensable ally, and that we after almost 50 years, 47 years, that we've had this Iranian revolutionary regime that is not just bad for Israel. People forget this is horrific for America. The amount of American lives that have been taken, especially during the Iraq War. We don't have to go back to 83 and the Beirut bombing and 241 Marines that were killed. But I'll read what Graham said. He says, "It's increasingly clear to me that voices opposing entanglement and the risk associated with decisive action are getting louder." And if that's true, and I don't think Graham is somebody who plays around with his statements, I think he's pretty direct, that implies something we do know, that there are voices in the administration that are saying, don't get involved here. Maybe just do a limited action, cut some deal, take some victory. And obviously this is not a straightforward decision for the United States, because what is going to be needed is going to be a campaign of many, many weeks, if not a few months. The remnants of this, when this regime collapse, are not necessarily going to go to regime change. And it's going to take patience, especially in a midterm election year. So the president is going to have a fateful decision to make, but the decision is clear to me that at this point, I would rather take my chances with regime collapse. If America also helps the protesters with strike funds, more Starlings, maybe help get others to send some weapons in there to help the protesters, and certainly verbally say we are pro-Iranian. I'm willing, I think the chance for American national security interests is to act now and not to back down and not to make it look like Iran is, it comes out as a victor.
You spoke about those protests. Indeed, we are seeing renewed protests at universities in Iran. We're going to get to that in a minute. First of all, Alexander, what do you make of, indeed, where the negotiations are right now? We see the Iranians claiming that they are going to submit a counter proposal, confidence building measures. Is this, as Eric said, just taqiyya, which is lying for the purpose of whatever goals that they have, or do they actually intend maybe to try to get some kind of deal here with President Trump?
The answer is very complicated. I think, first of all, it's clear that it is lying, not necessarily taqiyya, but the Iranians are trying to come back to their traditional tactics, meaning procrastination and endless talks, while preserving their smile attacks. It means they're moving one step forward and two steps backwards. In principle, one must take into account that any concession is impossible for the regime, because giving up their missile program and their support for the proxies, meaning support for terrorism, and of course the uranium enrichment, is tantamount for the regime to a political suicide, which the regime cannot simply afford, politically speaking, not only because of their Shia things, but also practically. And I don't think that anyone within the administration believes seriously to the Iranians. But given the general mood in America, I think Trump must prepare grounds for an imminent attack, because it's Trump promised no more wars, and we're talking about the war. No matter that it costs for America nothing in terms of boots on the ground and American lives.
Eric, where do America's allies besides Israel stand on this? The Europeans, the Sunni states, when it comes to the possible military action?
Well, what the word is that countries like Saudi Arabia, the Omanis, Bahrain, Egypt, they are telling President Trump not to attack. And you'll say, why? Didn't everything revolve for the past 40 plus years around Iran and all their nefarious activities and threatening all of these countries? The assessment is that those countries think that Iran is weak enough right now. And if they're weak enough right now, it is probably better to leave them weak and not to destabilize the regime further, because they could be attacked. They could deal with what is going on right now. They don't want fossil fuels to go out of control, the market's out of control. So that's one ear that's going on. The Europeans, I really don't listen that much to their statements. They have been, lukewarm as far as, saying things regarding the protesters. But the bottom line question here is, will President Trump, for some deal, offer sanctions to a regime that killed 40,000 people in 2 days, maybe the worst atrocity since 1943 in Babi Yar, of that type, after the president said, to the Iranians, stop, which they didn't stop? And will he keep this just to a nuclear deal and minimize the ballistic missiles and the proxies and ignore the killings, rapes, torture of these protesters? So the protesters are supposedly, I've been watching the images as everybody has, they are back out. The young people in the universities in Tehran and other cities are out, again, risking their lives, knowing that the IRGC and the Bajis are willing to shoot them and kill them and purposely try to disfigure them for life going ahead. I know of a case, I work with Iran International, which is one of the opposition groups that does really good reporting. There was a 17-year-old who was injured, brought to a hospital, and the Iranian security forces killed him in his bed. I think he was hooked up to an IV and maybe intubated at the time. That part I don't know for sure. But the point is, these are the type of atrocities that are going on right now. And we have to ask ourselves, do we want to make a deal with this type of regime? And I think the answer is we should not. But the president may choose something much more limited. And I think, the president is also thinking about his legacy. He's thinking about, maybe I can get a Nobel Prize for this or for the Board of Peace back in Gaza. But if he leaves Iran intact and falls for their deception, however we describe it, I think history will not look favorably upon it.
Alexander, more protests in Iran, as we mentioned. Is there a chance of a return to those mass demonstrations in the streets that we saw around a month ago?
Well, I don't know what will happen, but judging by what they see and read in Persian regarding Iran, it's very difficult to imagine a full-scale comeback to the previous demonstrations because, look, I think it's very difficult to expect people taking to the streets in face of the barrels of machine guns, because the repression was unprecedented and was very bloodthirsty. But still, despite of all that, we see the resumption of protests at the universities. Yet on the other hand, one may say that the regime knows how to cope with that specifically because the universities have always been in Iran an epicenter, so to say, of protest. It does not endanger the regime. And I would like to say that it is all this imagination or scenarios that the regime will collapse by its own right are baseless because the IRGC are not a government body or security body that protects the regime. They are the regime. They have their resources, funds, and they have internet also, so they can hold a lot of time. They don't care about the suffering of the Iranian people.
That assessment?
I think Alexander is correct. They don't care about their people. And the most likely thing is the IRGC will be the one who picks up the remnants if there's regime collapse. You notice I use the word regime collapse and not regime change. When we say the word regime change, we automatically go to a positive picture. But when things fall apart, the strongest party takes over. Think about during the Arab Spring that quickly went to an Arab winter in Egypt. What was the strongest party after there were so many liberals who were part of the uprising? It was the Muslim Brotherhood. Here it's a much stronger group, the IRGC, which controls everything. And the IRGC would be more than happy if the supreme leader died. They could put in, and in fact, I thought that in the accession plan that the next supreme leader would be under IRGC control. IRGC controls, first of all, they almost totally control the economy. What the supreme leader was controlling, he was controlling tens of billions of dollars, I believe, in the Sadat conglomerate. So they control the economy, they control information, they control the weapons, they control all the security mechanisms, the overseas Quds force. I mean, you can just go on of what it is. And you probably have 20% of people in Iran who are strongly behind or profit from the regime. So even if 80% is there, the 80%, what can they do? If they don't have weapons, the security apparatus has not seen defections within it. They are willing to kill tens of thousands without hesitation. That's a hard thing. But we have seen some cracks. We have seen some political officials been arrested who've been that are part of the apparatus who have said there's enough's enough, and they got arrested. So there are some indications that there are cracks in the regime. We should be behind the scenes, I'll just say, CIA, looking to help defections within security apparatus. That has always been a litmus test to know that a regime may have enough cracks to fall. And again, how much we're going to be involved and how much will the kinetic campaign with no boots on the ground will do. And again, as I said, it's got to be one that is long lasting. It can't be one that we did in June. And think about it. Israel, according to David Ignatius from the Washington Post, Israel had planes in the air, day 12, about to attack the IRGC, and President Trump had them turned around. Is the president's inclination, again, to restrain Israel? Or is the United States and Israel this time going to look to truly damage the regime and maybe lead to collapse and maybe have the foundation to build it to something better?
Well, certainly a crucial point will be with those IRGC and other people in the security apparatus. They're the ones who have the weapons. It really depends on them. Let's move to another topic. Alexander, we had that report about Iran reinserting themselves into Lebanon, really directing Hezbollah very closely at the moment. What do you make of those reports? And what do you make of the situation in southern Lebanon at the moment with Hezbollah?
Well, I don't think the situation alterated a lot, and Iran, for the time being, is unable of seriously helping Hezbollah. Surely they may be trying to direct them or to order them to do this or that, yet their real capacity to deliver or to supply Hezbollah with weapons and resources is very limited. It is more than limited because, physically speaking, Iranian planes cannot land in Lebanon or Damascus or Syria any longer. So that decides everything. I would say that to the time being, again, Hezbollah is not supposed to attack Israel because they simply cannot, and they still have some considerations of survival. But in the event of an American or Israeli joint attack on Iran, Hezbollah may try to do something, but again, they cannot do much. It will be very limited because now Israel and America have the upper hand on what is going on in all the theaters.
Eric?
I was going to say, I have a little different perspective. I work with the Alma Research and Education Center and have been following Hezbollah a lot. I don't know if we know what the potential of what Hezbollah has still left after Israel has attacked. What I do see is Israel, and with America closing its eyes, strikes every single day, many times a day, against Hezbollah activity. And I see the amount of activity has increased in anticipation that if the IRGC is now in charge of Hezbollah, kind of Willie Tafakir, where basically they follow what the supreme leader wants to do, or in this case, the IRGC, which is, if you will, one and the same. If they are following it and they're asked to be activated, if there is now war with Iran, I think Israel has been striking more to diminish it as much as it can. It has strikes, obviously, in the Beqar Valley, south of the Litani, north of the Litani. And so I think their potential of what they have could be more significant. I don't think they're totally disabled. I think they're still a very strong proxy force. And even if they want for their survival to last longer, I'm not sure it's their decision anymore. Actually, it could be a blessing in disguise, because if they do decide to start attacking not just the 5 areas Israel has on the border that it's had since the war, but starts attacking Israeli cities again, and Israel goes in and devastates Hezbollah, maybe finally the Lebanese government could actually get control of the Lebanese armed forces, and maybe that Hezbollah would get weak enough that they could get control of the country. That is a hope, but that is maybe a silver lining if Israel has to respond to what Hezbollah does. I think there are so many potentials here. The bigger potentials also, the other proxy is coming from Yemen that could be activated in addition. And the other one, don't forget, and it's been very quiet, is the Iranian-controlled Iraqi militias, the popular mobilization units that were still untouched, that they could also be called in as part of the resistance, the axis of resistance against Israel if there's a war. So there's going to be a multi-front war, I believe, if America goes and not just does a limited strike, if it strikes at all.
Alexander,
well,
yes, go ahead.
Yes, look, I also follow Alma, of course, and know them. I don't see any contradiction with what Eric has just said. Of course, I don't play down their devastating potential. But I only want to say that their capacity to do anything more that preceded the Beepers operation and the ensuing decapitation of Hezbollah is limited. Iraqis and Houthis, yes, they can, but Iraqis, I would say they're more dangerous for American bases in Iraq, yes. And the Houthis, again, it is hard to imagine that they can do anything more devastating than what they already have done. And either way, Israel can now unleash all its devastating power of replication to really to end up Hezbollah. And the last thing I want to say, there is no way the Lebanese government disarms Hezbollah, because they simply cannot physically. It's tantamount, to take a Jewish New York resident and ask him, go and disarm all the New York crime structures. It's impossible, because no one gonna risk his life to comply with American requirements. And never forget that half of the Lebanon, what we call the Lebanese army, consists of its private officers consist of Shia. There's no way they fight Hezbollah, and it's simply physically impossible. Yes, they want to do that, but it is impossible. So Israel will have to do that sooner than later.
Right, so you bring up the issue of the Lebanese government, and we heard there Joseph Aoun, the president, basically saying about these strikes, Israel is destabilizing the situation, and we have this possibility of some type of political arrangement. But from Israel's perspective, it's trying to actually enforce the ceasefire that was signed, which is that the Hezbollah are not supposed to be armed and to, on the Israeli border. So what do you make of the Lebanese state, the president's statements here, and at least their posture that they're giving out concerning this issue? Alexander and Eric.
As you say, it's only posture because, of course, Lebanese president or whoever else can never say, look, we cannot do that. We hope that Israel will do that. It's impossible either for them. But I don't think that anyone except for Hezbollah seriously fears Israeli actions or bombings because everyone knows they target only bad guys, will never bomb Christian or just Sunni areas. If Israel does something, it will strike Hezbollah concentrations and places and sites where they're deployed. But of course, they cannot say that overtly. So let's wait and see. The only thing that is important for everyone to consider that all this, American thought, which is very algorithmic, it goes by playbook. Let's, for example, to have stability in Syria, we must have united Syria, or Lebanese government must do something because it's government. Hi, it's not a government, it's just a conglomerate of confessions that you can call them government, but they never act as a normal government that acts along the lines of a playbook. It's impossible. So it's a bid list and tribes and confessions. Who is stronger? This is what is the most decisive factor.
Eric, final words briefly before we go.
I do agree. Lebanon is a failed state, 50% Shiite, and I don't have great optimism there. But I want to come full circle back. We said that the proxies maybe not, there's a limited amount they could do, and I think we can agree upon it. The question really is, if Iran retaliates against Israel, does Israel, the questions are, have enough interceptors? What did Iran learn from the 12-day war to game the system to beat the interceptors? There is, the quantity of ballistic missiles. We're talking at least medium range. Short range don't reach Israel, but medium range could certainly hit American allies in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain. Yeah. But of the middle range ones, how many do they have, and how can they get through? And this is obviously a very serious concern for Israel.
Certainly a big ballistic missile attack tried to overwhelm the defense systems. That's something that Israel will be wary of. Alexander Greenberg and Eric Mandel, thank you, both of you, very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Now, U.S. commentator Tucker Carlson is facing backlash after falsely claiming that President Isaac Herzog visited Jeffrey Epstein's infamous island. He made the comments during a combative interview in Israel with U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee.
Current president of Israel, President, who I know President Herzog, going very well, apparently was at Pedo Island. That's what it says in the disclosures.
Now, Huckabee responded that he was unaware of any such leak, which indeed never existed. After learning the claims were false, Huckabee said the allegations could be the stuff of libel lawsuits. Carlson later issued an apology on X for the misinformation.
Well, now we've received a long letter from President Herzog's office denying that he went to Epstein's island. In fact, denying unequivocally that he had any contact with Epstein ever. They didn't know each other. They never emailed with each other, never been in the same room. They had no relationship of any kind. I've gotten a lot of letters like this over the years from people alleging, oh, you got it wrong, but rarely do you get a denial this unequivocal. And so for that reason, we are taking it seriously. There's nothing worse than impugning the reputation of an innocent man. And so I just want to say clearly, I'm sorry to imply that I knew something I didn't know. Of course, I don't know that Isaac Herzog was on the island.
And that's all for this edition of IOTV on the Hour. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.